It's late July, and the New York Mets are in first place by themselves. Now, what should they do?
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, or whatever they call it these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And the best way to get a hold of us is right here on the YouTubes. Put your comments down there. And if you are going to be someone who posts on one of those social media sites that I mentioned, use that hashtag at where is it? Everyday, there it is, Everyday Sully. Why? It helps me find you. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get you. If you have something to say, let me know. All the games of baseball on the 23rd day of July have come to a close. It was a wild night of baseball, including the a few bunch of afternoon games, including one where the Milwaukee Brewers, who lost 1-0, their winning streak ended. They seemed pretty mad about that, and Priester pitched a terrific game, and the Brewers absolutely just smacked around the Seattle Mariners 10-2. And the Brewers, with that victory and the fact that Salvador Perez hit, which is, I think, his 80th home run in the last 3 days, the Royals beat, and Pasquantino got a couple. So I wonder if the Sasquatch dude made it to Wrigley. The Brewers are now in first place by themselves. They have the best record in baseball by themselves, which brought us to the trivia question, which was Milwaukee related, which was, how many Milwaukee Sluggers, Braves and Brewers, have hit 50 home runs in a season? And of course, there have been terrific Brewers sluggers and Braves sluggers, and hell, two of the greatest home run hitter of all time, arguably, and certainly one of the most prolific home run hitters was his teammate for years in Milwaukee and Atlanta. But Ty Jacob Music, 4401, says Prince Fielder is the only Brewer. And guess what? He's the only Brewer or Milwaukee Brave to ever hit 50 home runs. Only Prince Fielder. He's the only one to do it. And think about all the Harvey Wallbangers, the Gorman Thomases, and later the Ryan Brauns of the world. But of course, Henry Aaron and Eddie Matthews. I had to double check Eddie Matthews. Henry Aaron will never cease to amaze me. His stats are astonishing. He hit 755 home runs, obviously. And I've made this point, and this point's been made several times, that if he got all his other hits, but all of his home runs were caught at the warning track, and he finished with 0 home runs, but still had the rest of his hits, he'd still be in the Hall of Fame because he'd have over 3,000 hits. He had more than 3,000 hits that were not homers in his career. But he had 755 home runs, which means over 22 seasons, he averaged 35 home runs a year. And he never hit 50, which means he never had that one gigantic season that made up for a year or two where he only hit 8 or 16. So it's only Prince Fielder, not Henry Aaron, not Eddie Matthews, who's a Hall of Famer in his own right. So there you go. Good job there. Another person who texted me the other day, Andre Dubuchet, is one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. If you watch Conan O'Brien's show over the years, you will have seen him he was a sketch performer on Conan O'Brien. He was on hundreds of sketches. You would have seen him. If you saw his picture, you know exactly who he is if you're a fan of Conan. He was one of the writers and a brilliant sketch performer. I knew him in New York. He was a brilliant sketch performer there. And he did an album of surrealistic comedy called Poseidon's Retreat, which is not only made me laugh out, it's brilliantly funny. It had both of my sons scream laughing. It's so funny and out there and terrific. He's brilliant. He's also been a close friend of mine for decades and is a huge fan of the New York Metropolitans. And I'm guessing he's listening to this podcast. And he texted me What should the Mets do? See, that's why he's an Emmy-nominated writer. He's able to just get right to the point of it. Well, the Mets are in first place by themselves. Now, partly because they overcame a Mike Trout home run, and Lindor and Alonso broke out of their slumps, and the Mets won a game which was, the final score. What was the final score? I think it was 6-3, and it was actually it felt a lot closer than that. I mean, the Mets jumped out to a 6-1 lead, and the Angels came chipping back, and they were threatening a bunch, but Diaz ultimately got the final out, and the Mets won the game. And then the Red Sox and the Phillies played an absolutely bizarre game on ESPN, which looked like at the beginning that it was just going to be all Phillies all the time. They scored, the Phillies, were jumped out to a lead. The Red Sox just looked dead from the neck up. And then suddenly Gonzalez hits a grand slam, and the Red Sox took the lead, and the Phillies tied it in the 8th. And then both of them scored their stupid ghost runners in the 10th. And Narvaez hit a home run. Bernardino wiggled out of trouble, and the Red Sox won the game, which meant they're holding on to dear life for their playoff spot. But with that 9-8 victory by the Red Sox, and with the Mets doubling up the Angels, the Mets are now in first place by themselves. I picked the Philadelphia Phillies to win the World Series. They were my pick to win the World Series. I like their hitting. I like their pitching. When you lose a game 9-8, obviously you didn't have the best pitching for a night. I still think the Phillies are a better team top to bottom than the New York Metropolitans. However, as of this recording, the Mets are ahead in the only category that counts, and that's the win-loss department. And the Mets are a good team. Obviously, they're in first place in late July. They could win it all. They could defeat Milwaukee. They could defeat Chicago. They could defeat Philadelphia. And we see that, the Dodgers won on a 2-run, 2-out, bottom of the 9th hit by Freddie Freeman today, but the Dodgers have looked wobbly. I do think the Mets have to do two things, and I think they can be a little bit creative about one of them. Because if you take a look at who is available, quite frankly, in one of the positions where they need to improve, the pickings are slim. But if they're creative, I think not only can the Mets put themselves in a position where they could be a major contender, this could be the team that puts away the when are we going to win? It's been since 1986. And it may require them letting go of some of their top prospects, but just bear with me. Hey, look at this here. My latest hat from Gameday Hue. Today's episode is brought to you by Gameday Hue. And this is what I'm holding right here. For baseball fans like me, this one hits the mark. Gameday Hue makes clean, no logo gear with team-inspired colorways from every pro and college fan base. It's all about letting your colors speak for you. No giant logos, just smart, versatile style that works on game day, on the course, and anywhere in between. Now, look, sometimes it's great to go out there and have your team logo on there, and you're like, oh, I'm all for it. I'm all for my team. Yay, yay. Or if you're a big Expo fan like I have right back there. But sometimes you want something a little more low key. You're golfing, you're going out with some family. You don't want to have a big, huge logo on it. You want something that looks a little cleaner, looks a little classier, and yet does the job. Guess what? Whatever gear you have, this is going to go great with. And if you want to have it to a tailgate, or if you're going to run out errands, these are fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. And it's not just hats. They have the gloves for the golf course, and it's a perfect gift for a fan who has everything. Right now, you can get 15% off with code MLB at GamedayHue.com. That's GamedayHue.com. The code that even stacks on bundle deals. So the time is right now to load up. Let your colors talk, because colors speak louder than words. That's GamedayHue.com, code MLB 15. I think the Mets need to do a couple things. I think the Mets need a couple things. I think they need some bullpen depth. They obviously have Diaz in there as your closer. And I think every team needs pitching depth, but I do think the Mets need to get at least one other excellent reliever in there to give them that depth to going down the stretch. I also think they need to shore up their outfield. I think they need an everyday outfielder. And I think they need to get someone who it'd be best for the Mets if they're under control for next year, but so that so they can just sort of put their outfield and leave it be. And I do think they need one more solid hitter in the lineup and put him in the outfield. I think they'll be in good shape. Depth in their bullpen, depth in the outfield. And there's a slew of relievers out there. There's a bunch of players who, you can come up from Arizona, have half of their team is going to be available. And then of course you have, the Pittsburgh Pirates, who do have some pitching. They're not going to trade Paul Skeens. I saw maybe they're going to acquire Paul Skeens. They're not acquire Paul Skeens. But David Bednar is a good pitcher. And Dana Santana's done well. And then Andrew Heaney, who's had his ups and downs, but he could be a major league pitcher. And Mitch Keller, of course, is probably going to be dealt. And he's had a pretty decent year. He's a starting pitcher, and of course, you can never have a starting pitcher. But David Bednar is a pitcher who I've heard a couple of times been bounced around as a potential landing spot for the Mets. And of course, as I mentioned, Arizona has a bunch of pitchers who are available, and there are a couple of pitchers who are available that could be coming out through Colorado. And of course, the A's are going to dump their players. All the players that they sign to big long contracts so they can get the revenue sharing, they're going to be gone. And before long, Luis Severino, who's pitched well on the road and horrifically at home and wants the hell out of Sacramento, kick the tires on him. And maybe Mason Miller, who's not having the dominant year that he had last year, but he still has 57 strikeouts in 36 innings, and he'll eventually get a raise, which means the A's will trade him away. But I do think when you take a look at who some of the outfielders who are available, there's really, in terms of the ones that are going to be dealt, Ramon Laureano has talent, but does he really move the needle any? But, and of course, Luis Robert Jr. on the White Sox, who's had a horrible year, but has been actually, this last month has been pretty good. I think he said, wait, I could be traded to a contender. And you see a lot of times a player wake up, especially poor Robert Jr., who's been on this horrible White Sox team. He was on the team that made the playoffs in 2021, and they've been dreadful. I mean, they were the worst team in baseball history last year in terms of win-losses, and they're not that much better this year. So maybe playing on a contender would wake him up. And there have been lots of instances of people who are not big, huge superstars being acquired who become the difference makers. Just look at Steve Pearce when the Red Sox acquired him in 2018. It's not a situation. Do you know where you were and what you were doing when the Red Sox acquired Steve Pearce from the Blue Jays? But he became the World Series MVP. Cody Ross, he's another one. Cody Ross was picked up on waivers after the trade deadline by San Francisco, and he wound up hitting those massive home runs against Roy Halladay and became the NLCS MVP in 2010. And, there's lots of instances where a player goes from a crap team to a good team, and suddenly they get rejuvenated and start playing well. And maybe that could happen with Luis Robert Jr., but that's not really what I have in mind. And I think the Mets have to think a little bit outside the box. And it's a trade that I don't necessarily want to see happen because of my roots as a Boston fan. But it's one that I think the Mets should kick the tires on, and that's Jared Durant. Durant's name has been kicked around a lot because the Red Sox have the dreaded surplus of outfielders. I'm always shudder when I hear something. We got too many of these. And really, then I would say just wait. There'll be an injury. There'll be something. Someone will go in a slump. But for whatever reason, the Red Sox seem like they want to deal Jared Durant. Now, a deal for Jared Durant to the Mets won't make sense as a 1-for-1 deal. Because what the Red Sox, if they're going to deal Jared Durant and still contend, and they are still a playoff team in late July, and they haven't made the playoffs since 2021, which, by the way, was a year where the freaking White Sox made the playoffs, to give you an idea how long ago that was. And so if you're thinking, okay, they need to be relevant, they have to at least get to the postseason. They have to at least not have a year where it's, okay, we're playing golf when the playoffs begin. And if you're going to deal Durant, then you have to get a major league pitcher. You need to strengthen the pitching staff. And there's a team out there that is probably, even though they're not that far out, is probably going to deal because they have a bunch of players currently available. That's Minnesota. And this is where I think the Mets have to get creative. Now, there is a pitcher on Minnesota that if the Red Sox trade Jared Durant and they get a major piece back for Jared Durant, I think as someone who is roots as a Red Sox fan, I would have to say okay, and that's Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan, who has pitched quite well, thank you very much, this season. He was he made the All-Star team this year, and he's been a Twins pitcher since the 2021 season, since the playoffs year of 2021 for the Twinkies. And he is someone who is he's still not going to be a free agent until 2028. So it'll cost whatever team that acquires him a pretty something or another. But if you put him in the middle of the rotation for the Red Sox, and with the way some of their other pitchers have been starting to blossom a little bit, I'm all for it. I mean, I would rather they not, because I like Durant, and I don't necessarily want to trade away young players from the team. But if they have to do that, if they could basically net them someone like Ryan, well, then I'm for it. By the way, the Twins also have a bunch of relievers who may be on the way out. Griffin Jax is someone who strikes out a ton of batters and would give any team that gets them bullpen depth. Durant, who's their closer, is having a dynamite season. These are all players with high strikeout rates per innings pitched. And if they're going to be trading some of these players and trading them high, not the front office won't be high, they'll be trading when their value is high, then this could be something where the Red Sox could land Joe Ryan and the Mets could land what they need, which is an everyday outfielder like Durant and one of those relievers. I said, if they walked away with Griffin Jackson, Jared Durant, I would say, you know what? I'd take my chances with the rest of the team like that. I would. Now, what would it cost the Mets? It would cost the Red Sox. The guy was the All-Star MVP last year, and an everyday player that is currently starting on a team that's a playoff team right now. That's a pretty high price. That's a proven commodity. Getting back Joe Ryan. Now, whether they would have to throw in a younger player or something like that, I don't know. I haven't worked out all the bumps and details on this. But if the Red Sox trade Durant, they'd have to get a piece like Joe Ryan back. And for the Mets to get an everyday outfielder like Durant, and let's just say Jax, who would be a big strikeout reliever to match up with Diaz in the bullpen, suddenly they have bullpen depth and then straightened out outfield. What would it cost the Mets? Well, I'm a bit of a broken record on this. I am not precious with my prospects. And when you're trying to win right now, the Mets have an opportunity to win right now and win with a team and recapture the city and win for the first time since 1986. And I'm looking at their top prospects according to MLB.com. Jet Williams, Jonah Tong, Nolan McLean, Carson Bench, Brandon Sprott, Jacob Reimer, Ryan Clifford, Jesus Baez, A.G. Ewing, Blade Tidwell. With the exception of Tidwell, I don't think any of those players are going to make an impact, could potentially make an impact on the 2025 New York Mets. I believe Tidwell did pitch in the major leagues. And I don't know if Jet Williams has, I'm just going to scroll down here in baseballreference.com, single greatest website in the history of the planet Earth. Yeah, Tidwell did make a couple of appearances on the big league roster. Jet Williams has not. I know people who hoard the prospects and just talk about the prospects are valuable, this, that, and the other thing, would shudder when I say this, especially when I've said it about Detroit and Milwaukee, some of the other teams where the opportunity is right now. Detroit has to just act like win right now because you don't even know how long you're going to have Skubal on the team. But for the Mets, who've been waiting so long and spent so much and still are waiting, they've been to the World Series once since the year 2000. Is Jet Williams a surefire player? I don't know. He's a blue chip prospect. But if you can look up and improve your offense and improve your outfield with a proven major leaguer and a proven commodity in the bullpen, a package involving Jet Williams would be so cheap. So cheap. Because you don't know if he's going to be the person to produce down the line. You don't. He could be. He could be great. He could be phenomenal. He could be Will Myers. And I always go back to this. When the Royals traded Will Myers, people killed them. He was their top prospect. He was going to be the guy to lead. He was going to be a next superstar. And they wound up getting Shields and Wade Davis in the deal that sent Myers and Odorizzi to Tampa. And Myers won the Rookie of the Year his first year, and people say, oh, they got fleeced. No, they didn't get fleeced. Myers was a fine player. He was a good player who had a nice career. He didn't become the superstar. Shields became a big reason why they won the pennant in 2014. It was Wade Davis standing on the mound against the Mets, clinching the 2015 World Series. You sometimes have to pay something to get something. And to shore up your outfield and your pitching staff, and it costs you Jet Williams. Look, if he turns out to be Ryan Sandberg, he turns out to be Jeff Bagwell or one of the other players who were traded at the deadline who turned out to be Hall of Famers, then you what? Take your lumps. But if you wind up winning a World Series along the way, you say that's the cost of doing business. And if you're the Twins, you're saying, hey, I'm not giving up Ryan and Jackson unless we're getting blue chip prospects, unless we're getting top prospects in return. And for the Red Sox, we're giving up a guy who was an all-star just last year and is young. A three-way deal. The Red Sox get Ryan in their rotation. The Red Sox get Durant. The Mets get Durant and a major league reliever in their bullpen. And the Twins get a haul of young players that they cross their fingers on. That is a cheap price, in my very humble opinion. Now, tell me how I'm wrong, but that's what I think the Mets need to do. They have to walk away with an everyday outfielder and a relief pitcher. And getting David Bednar and Luis Robert Jr. could do the trick. Bednar could fit in great, and Luis Robert Jr. could have a phenomenal 2 months. And it could be the situation that the Braves had in 2021 when they brought in, Rosario and Soler and Peterson, and all of a sudden those three outfielders were, especially Soler and Rosario, were the reason why they won the World Series. And those were not exactly heralded acquisitions. Hell, they got Rosario for, Pablo Sandoval, who was then waived. So, yeah, it can happen. And that's probably what they're going to do. But I think they should try to make a splash. Do you know why? Because there's a chance to have something really special here, something really cool. And you know what? Sometimes it's about spending and spending some money too. And speaking of that, all right, let's hear from our good friends over at Monarch Money. Do you ever wish that managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning for a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control of your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Now, if you're married, you have a partner, you can share your finances with them, and Monarch Money can help you all stay on the same page and keep track of everything. But sometimes you lose track of spending. You did a subscription you forgot about. Sometimes you double it up. Monarch Money helps you catch all those things. Have all your accounts, spending, investments in one place and help you build for that special thing. For me, it was getting my master's degree. But for someone else, it could be a big trip, a house, a boat, maybe even a jet ski. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Quickly going around the league. Do the Yankees know these games count? I'm serious. Did the Yankees know that these games actually mean something, or do they think these are just spring training games? For a team that, and I've said this before, I have never seen a contending team this horrible at defense. I mean, I've seen some teams that have won whose defense wasn't great. This is horrible. This is the type of defense you would expect to see on last year's White Sox. And so here they go. They lose the first game in an incredibly sloppy way to Toronto. This is head to head, trying to make up ground in the AL East. And they wound up, losing that first game in a really sloppy way. Then last night, they dust themselves off. Volpe makes another error, but Rice hits that home run in the ninth inning, saves them. And they go in today, Fried pitching, coming back from his blister issue, and they have a chance to win the series. And they take a 1-0 lead after 2 innings. And then it just turned into say it with me, a comedy of errors. A weird play at the plate allowed 2 runs to score. Fried made a throwing error. Chisholm made an error. Rice made an error. Dominguez made an error. What a miracle it wasn't Volpe. But with so much on the line, how are they just still this horrific at defense? 4 errors? They gave the Blue Jays 4 extra outs. Now, and they made it a lot, made it 8-4. It doesn't matter that Judge hit yet another home run. And guess what? With the Red Sox win, Red Sox are creeping up on them. Now the Rays wound up losing, but and Seattle wound up losing, but the Yankees are not assured a playoff spot. And if they keep dropping games and series, eventually that'll chip away. But does anyone believe that this team will go anywhere if they continue to field like this? I'm flabbergasted that this is still the problem. Sandy Alcantara, by the way, pitched a terrific game for the Marlins as he's for sale. I really hope if they're going to trade Alcantara, they should do it right now with those 7 shutout innings fresh on everyone's mind. His ERA was lowered to 6.66. I also want to happen so that could be his final ERA with the Marlins. I get it. His value will be high right now. I really hope the Marlins will get someone who is a major league ready player back from him. And then I hope they don't do anything else. I hope they don't trade away any of their other pieces. Right now, they're 48-53. It is not out of the question. They're 5 games under 500. Making it to 500 is not out of the question for the Marlins. And they're a fun team. I want to see them get there. By the way, better late than never for Rafael Devers, who's, by the way, playing first base. Couldn't do that in Boston. Hit 2 home runs. I'm in the Bay Area right now. Everyone in the Bay Area is mad at Rafael Devers. So when is he going to break out? When is he going to break out? Well, he broke out today. 2 home runs. Verlander got his first win, and the Giants are still hanging around there. But the funny thing is one of the funny things about baseball, and great thing is you can look ahead on the schedule and you could say to yourself, oh, this is going to be an easy win. That's going to be an easy win. I guarantee you when the Tigers, with the best record in the American League, saw they were going to be playing the Pirates a bunch, they didn't expect the potential of losing all these games like they did 6-1 today. But they did. I'm sure when the Cardinals thought that they're trying to climb back into this race, and they thought, well, we're playing the Rockies. Okay, well, that's going to be some wins. They got shut out today, 6-0. I'm sure the Rays thought, oh, we're playing the dreadful White Sox. Oh, there we go. Here we go. They lost 11-9. That's right. Games have to be played, even when you're playing schmucks. Those schmucks can win. And oh, yeah, by the way, the Rangers won again. Look out for them, American League. Look out for them. If you let this Ranger team into the postseason and they acquire one more bat, I would be horrified to play them in a short series. Absolutely horrified. Well, there you go. That's we're gonna have a fun day of baseball tomorrow too. And then this weekend we got some great games, including the Phillies and the Yankees. And those are two second place teams right now. We're going to see which one of them steps up. Thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen today. For a second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on this channel on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And let's go over what the new trivia question is. The new trivia question is, what all-star player did the Twins trade to acquire Joe Ryan? That's right, Joe Ryan, all-star pitcher, was a pickup for a trade deadline acquisition. He was a minor leaguer, and he was one of those trade deadline moves that worked for the team trading away the veteran. What veteran, all-star player, did the Minnesota Twins trade to acquire Joe Ryan? Put your answers right down here. And follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about the Mets and a potential 3-team trade they should consider. Wondering if the Yankees realize these games count and saying, hey, better late than never for Rafael Devers. That almost rhymed. What a good time. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Let's get rid of that banner. And you can call me. Wait, what can people call me? Oh, yeah, Sully.